Hi, this is Dale Scrimshaw. Today we're going to look at just a very basic LP setup in Excel. We're going to follow along the example that's on pages 264 through about 268 of your text, where we use Excel Solver to solve LP problems. What we're going to do is just very basic setup here. You can use this same setup though for almost any Excel problem in LP. We'll have some other videos that expand on this a little bit, so this one will be fairly short. First thing you want to do, you see I have a blank Excel sheet here. First thing you probably want to do is put in some type of identifier that tells you what problem you are working on. Okay, so we've got Flair Furniture in there. Now you've got to put in your variables. What are you trying to determine? In this problem, they want to know how many tables and how many benches do they have to make to maximize profit. So we'll put a word in here for variables. This is my variables. And it's, what is it? It's tables, which we'll call T. And I think benches is the other one. So, and you know, this isn't really important. This just it doesn't have to be exact, but you want to have an idea of what you're doing there. And now you want to know, what are you going to try to solve for? And in this case, we want to know how many tables and how many benches should we make to maximize profit. So this area right here is going to be, in this problem, it's going to be units produced. Now some other problem, and you will see in other examples that it might be something else. Notice I'm just going to drag this over so that I get all of that in there and it doesn't run over into the other cells. So that's my units produced. And now I need to put in my objective function. What is the objective function? I remember as we developed formulations for some of these problems, I can't talk and type at the same time, can I? That's a little difficulty I have. Let's see. So I may not spell everything right here as I go along. And don't be concerned about that too much. Make it a little wider so I get all of that in there. Remember, as we formulated our problems, we had an objective function. What were we going to do? In this particular problem, tables yields a $70 profit and benches yield a $50 profit. So we'll put that in there. And now, since that's going to be our profits, let's come over here and put a word in right here, P-R-O-F-I-T-S, profits. Now notice as I've done this, I've left two cells blank right here. That's where we're going to calculate the units produced. So those two cells are going to be blank right now, and later there'll be a value in there. Okay, so that's what we have now. Now we have our constraints. So we're going to come down here about right there maybe, and we'll put in our constraints. And probably that's not spelled right, but I'm not going to get too involved right now in that. And we have the carpentry, and I think we had the painting area. So there's our two constraints. And now for tables, what was the constraint? For tables, it was 4 hours of carpentry, and for benches, it was 3 hours of carpentry. So 4 there and 3 there. We're going to leave this one blank, and we're putting in our constraints now. So we're going to put a symbol in here of what is this constraint. And we're going to go insert, symbol, and this constraint has to be less than or equal to, and that constraint is 240. Now you could do this a couple of different ways. Notice again I've left a cell blank here. That's because in there we have a calculation to develop. This calculation must be less than or equal to 240. So that's where your calculation is going to be for that constraint. So that's why that's blank. Now the painting constraints, what were the painting constraints? They were 2 and 1. So 2 there and 1 there. And now we'll also put our symbol in here. The symbols here aren't really necessary. They're just kind of nice to keep us informed of what we're doing and consistent with what we're doing. Okay, and the constraint here is 100. So we'll put that constraint in. So now we have our basic outline here. Tables, benches, units produced, nothing in that area. Here's where our profits are going to go. Here's our constraints. Well, it's not spelled right, but we're not going to concern ourselves. And our constraints for carpentry and painting for tables and for carpentry and painting for chairs. They're both less than or equal to, and these values. We don't have anything in here because that's where we're going to calculate. And we don't have anything in here because that's where we're going to calculate. Actually, what we're going to do is change these cells. We'll see that momentarily. Now, at this point, I want to put in some formula. And my profits, what do I want in profits? My profits are the units produced of tables times the objective function, or the $70 profit per table, plus the units produced benches, plus or times the $50 profit. Now, I could write that formula as B4 times B5 plus C4 times C5. But there's an easier way to do that. I'm going to expand this over just a little bit, maybe about there, so we can see what I put in this. I want to put a formula in here, and I want it to be a formula, and so I'm going to go up here and insert function, and I'm going to look for this function right here, sum product. Now, you may not have that function automatically show up. If you don't, just type it in here. Type sum function and tell it to go, and you should get that. So I'm going to select this one, and you notice it comes up with an array, array, array. So basically what I want to do is in the first array, I want these two cells, and in the second array, I want these two cells. And you notice it puts it in there for me. And that's what I want. I'm going to say that's okay. So that's the function that I put in there. Now, I want to reduce this in size again because we don't really need it that big there. But if I have my cursor here, you see I have sum product, parentheses, B colon C4, and comma B5 colon C5 and parentheses closed. Now, for my constraints, I want the units produced times this value, the constraint for carpentry, plus the units produced of benches times this constraint for carpentry, and I want that in this area, and I want it to be less than 240. So I could copy this formula right here down to here, but when I do that, it's going to change this B4, C4, and I don't want to change those. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to select my F4 key, function F4, function 4. And you notice I have my dollar signs there now. I'm going to go right here and do it again. Now when I copy this formula down into these two cells, that B4, C4 won't change. So right click, copy, there and there, right click, paste function. And now you see I have here B4 to C4, B8 to C8, these values right here. Now at this point, I'm going to hit my escape key just so this stops flashing and I get out of that copy mode. Now at this point, I have everything in here as we see it on page 266, except for one thing. Notice he has a 1 in this cell and a 1 in this cell. Well, that is a handy way to see if your formula are working correctly. Because if I put a 1 here, what happens? Put a 1 there, and I put a 1 there, and I hit my enter. Immediately see I get 1 times 70 plus 1 times 50, and that's 120, so I know my formula is right. And here I get 1 times 4, which is 4, 1 times 3, which is 3, 7. So I know my formula are working correctly. That's a handy little help. You don't need it there, but it is a handy little help, and that's what he has in that area. Now he also shows us that these values, this is the right-hand side of the constraint, and this is the left-hand side of the constraint. Remember in class the other day, I identified the right-hand side, and I said, and this is your left-hand side. It's the actual value that becomes the left-hand side of the constraint. And he shows that in his picture on page 266. Okay, so now at this point I have all my information in here, and the next thing I want to do is I want to use Solver. So I go to Data, and I go over here and select Solver. Now, if Solver isn't in your add-ins, if Solver isn't in here, you should have it if you have data analysis. If it's not, just go into your add-ins and add Solver. So I'm going to select Solver now. Solver opens, and the first thing I want to do is set my objective. What is my objective? It's profits. So I want to tell Solver that this is the cell that is the objectives. Now, am I minimizing, or am I maximizing, or am I trying to reach a particular value? Well, I'm maximizing in this problem. So I leave that as maximized. Now, if I was minimizing, I'd check this box. By changing variable cells, so I'm going to put my cursor here. What cells am I going to change? These two cells, because I'm going to determine how many tables and how many benches I produce. Incidentally, I just see I've got benches here, and he has chairs in his examples. No big deal. It is important, though, to put something in here because, as we'll see later, Excel Solver will use these cells. So back to my changing variable cells. Which cells are going to vary? The units produced. The easy way to do this, I can put my cursor right here, as you see it's flashing, and I can highlight that. The other thing I can do is I can select this, and the Solver parameters, I'm going to do the same thing. B4, C4, and accept it. Notice the dollar signs are automatically put in there for me too. Subject to the constraints. I have these constraints, so what are those? I'm going to add my constraints now. Subject to the constraints, cell reference, this constraint, less than or equal to. Now, if you check this box, you'll see you get some other options. We're going to leave it less than or equal to the constraint, this cell. I notice it put dollar signs in all of those for me. I want to add another constraint. This cell, less than or equal to this cell. Now I could have selected this method to do it. I selected just clicking into the area and highlighting a cell. That's all the constraints I have, so I'm going to select OK. And I get this. I can check it now. Set objective function $D $5, that's correct. By changing B4 C4, that's correct. Subject to the constraints D8, yes. Less than or equal to F8, yes. D9, less than or equal to F9. Okay, that's all right. Remember, I have formulas in here and formulas in here. Okay, now make unconstrained variables non-negative. Yes, I want that. Select a solving method. Simplex LT. That's the solving method I want. So I have everything ready, and I'll tell Solver to solve. You get this pop-up. Solver found a solution. All constraints and optimality conditions are satisfied. You can keep it, or you can restore original values. If you keep the solution, you're going to keep this area over here filled all out. If you say restore original values, like that, and then select OK, you're going to go back to blank cells here. You won't change the formula, but you'll go back to blank cells. We're going to tell it keep solver solution. And this is click to accept the solution and place the resulting values in the adjustable cells. Here you notice it says click to restore the original values in the adjustable cells. The adjustable cells are here and here and here and here. And this one, of course, profits. We're going to keep solver solution. Now, I think if you look on page, which one was it? Well, it's program C2H on page 269. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. You'll see that he has now the same values that we have. Now over here are some important things. We can get a report. We can get an answer report, a sensitivity report, or a limits report. Now we're gonna visit this area later. This video is just to give you the basic idea. And so we're going to say keep solver solution. We're going to say OK. It's going to come up like that. I'm going to come down here and say sheet 1, Flair, F-U-R, furniture. We're going to call it solution. Okay. So that's the basic idea. Put in something that identifies which problem you're working on. Your variables, what are your variable things, what are the things you're going to change? What are the variables physically that you're going to change? Your units produced or whatever makes sense right here. Leave those two cells blank, that's where you're going to calculate. Your objective function based on what your variables are. Put the word profit or something in here to tell you what you're finding over here. Put a formula in there, that's a sum product formula, where you're multiplying this changing cell times this value, this changing cell times this value, and adding them. Put in your constraints, spell it right too. Put in your constraints, leave your blank cell here for your formula. Put this in as a reference so you remember what you're doing and what are your constraints. And that's basically your basic LP setup for Excel. Okay? Hey, any questions? I'll be checking email through the week. Let me know if you have any questions on it. Okay? Thank you very much.